Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha.
I'm a strong believer in, we got everything around us to do what we love. I feel like a lot of us get limited because of either resources, we can't afford it, you know what I mean? So we end up not doing what we love and we settle. Learn how to express myself mostly through hip hop. This idea of making something out of nothing, using what you got around you to make things happen.
In 1982, Nike debuted its Air Force One. It was a basketball shoe that featured new technology, but its fresh style is what made it popular among hip-hop heads and what's made it a fashion and culture icon. There's a direct tie between the shoe and STL. 20 years after their release, Air Force Ones hit the music charts with the local rap group, the St. Lunatics, and their hip-hop anthem, Air Force Ones, which was on the 2002 Nellyville album. And just this month, August 2023, St. Louis-born and raised artist Aaron Fowler debuted his very own, very large pair, or purr, as many St. Louisans would say, as part of a hip-hop dedicated exhibit at St. Louis Art Museum. Here to discuss that big sculptural piece now at SLAM and how he makes his art, career, and life between LA, New York, and St. Louis, we have Aaron Fowler in studio. Aaron, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, I deliberately left out a description of your sneaker sculpture because honestly, words don't capture what it is. It doesn't do it justice. So tell us first about the dimensions of Live Culture Ones and what it looks like.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very large scale shoe. It's about 9 foot long, probably about 4 to 5 foot tall, and about 4 foot wide. So it's a pretty large sculpture.
Mm-hmm. And they're white shoes, right?
Yeah, they're white.
Okay.
They're made completely out of all white car parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Including seatbelts for the laces.
Yes.
There's a lot of detail that's really fantastic. What is the inspiration story for Live Culture Ones?
Well, during the pandemic, I made this sort of like a new way of expressing or putting out your art. It was like a space of like freedom and manifesting people's dreams, and what they're thinking about, what they kind of like work for. So I ended up creating something called Into Existence, which is about that manifestation, which is just giving local people, that are doing amazing things like a platform, and also just allowing them to see themselves with using me as a resource. Mm-hmm. So then I was able to meet, and I'm very blessed to meet this guy, Damo, who came into an installation that I made at the Luminary. He saw the stage. It was like a stage inside and different businesses. And he saw it and saw a vision to basically do what he loves inside of there.
Okay.
So then he hosted some dance battles and a new thing called Flow Originals with his group called Live Culture.
Okay.
And that's like an underground hip hop music, everything hip hop, battles, b-boy, and everything. So they inspired me. We had an opportunity to show at the Kranzbergs, the Big Top, last year.
Okay.
And he threw an event called Flow Fest. And it was very just a big opportunity to put that on a bigger platform, and I end up making objects that reflect his movement.
Okay.
And the Live Culture, which is his group, I end up making the Air Force Ones to represent the dance battles and the b-boying aspect of his movement. Mm-hmm. So I end up making those shoes from that inspiration, for sure.
And how long did it take to make the sculpture?
It was funny, it came together really fast, probably 10 to 11 days.
Wow.
Yeah, just from nothing,
Okay. And it's certainly not nothing. It's we had Ricky Bird on the show to talk about the fashion elements of the exhibit, the culture. And she had mentioned this sculpture, but I had no idea what I was going to be walking in to see. So to hear that it didn't take that long is pretty incredible. Now, Shoes have been a thing in your art for a while now. Are you a sneakerhead by any chance?
I feel like, yeah, I mean, since I was young, I mean, I've always had like Jordans and Air Force Ones, you know, just pretty much all sneakers. I mean, we live for sneakers, you know,
Okay.
so it's just like I always had to stay fresh, they
Yeah.
say, you know what I mean? And especially every color Air Force Ones coming out as a kid, I had to have those, and Jordans especially as well.
And what is it about shoes that holds your imagination?
I don't know, it's just natural, you know, like you want to be fresh, you want to, you know, fresh outfit, you want the shoes to match, you know, plus shoes sort of have like it's a story to them, you know, it's always kind of, for me, it's like reminiscent of my childhood mostly, you know, and especially like the Jordans. I mean, everybody loved Jordan and what he represents, so, you know, having that pair means a lot, you know, for sure.
So no like Chicago STL kind of static or anything involved there?
No static. I think it's all part of the culture. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like that's just part of the culture. For sure.
So, you know, I just mentioned Ricky Bird and the culture, that exhibit that's now up at Slam. How was it that you became part of that?
Well, I mean, I had like who was I in touch with? Hannah. She saw an installation I did at the Luminary.
Okay.
And then I met Andrea actually at Flow Fest last year.
So that's Hannah Clem and
Hannah
Andrea
Clem.
Purnell.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I met Hannah. She's seen the Flow Fest at the Big Top. And she saw the shoes because at first they were going to, I think, show something different. I made like a big, large-scale chain that hangs from the ceiling. And they were interested in that piece, but then they saw the Air Force Ones, and she was like, "Oh, we have to show those." You
Okay.
know? So then, I mean, I wasn't expecting. I literally made it for the event, you know, and wasn't expecting it to be shown anywhere, no time soon or anything. It was literally just for the event. And she saw those and like, yeah, these we gotta show those.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a perfect combination of timing and availability.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
You can't call that type of stuff for real. You really
No,
can't.
really. No, you know, most folks identify hip hop as a music genre. What is it about hip hop that makes it, you know, like visual art also part of that? What makes visual art hip hop?
I mean, to be honest, like, it's funny, I'm a visual artist, but I really consider myself more of a hip hop artist. You know, like, before I really got into the visuals and knew about visuals, I learned how to express myself mostly through hip hop. You know, this idea of making something out of nothing, using what you got around you to make things happen, you know, doing it in a very free way, very fresh way, not a contrived way, just having like a sense of freedom and that expression, like saving your life, you know. So navigating the space and living through the world, I feel like hip hop sort of raised me, you know, gave me an attitude to be free and express myself. And then stumbling across like art, visual arts was just like a tool to express myself in a hip hop way.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like even though I went to fine art school and all that other stuff, and I'm showing paintings and sculptures and things like that, I feel like the attitude and the energy and the history comes from hip hop. You know, so hip hop comes first. To me.
Okay. And what were some of the first pieces that you made when you were young? And how old were you when you like really consciously started making things that you wanted to show and share with others?
You know, like, of course, being young, I'm always was drawing, you know, comic book characters and cartoons that I like and stuff like that. But I remember in the 7th grade, and particularly, I lost a little cousin of mine. His name was Darion, and he passed away in a car accident right off of Kings Highway, and like not too far from what's that, Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club. And they were just on their way home, my aunt and, you know, my cousin them, and he flew out the car and, you know, got hit. It was like a car accident. And I remember it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. You know, we were very close, and it just took everything away from me. So with that time is just a hard time in general. But I was in a drawing class at the time in middle school, and I had a teacher. His name was Mr. Guilfoyle. And I just did a drawing of him. We had an assignment to draw ourselves, and I ended up drawing him because it was happening that same week. And I remember that drawing like basically helped me heal. You know, I had laughed. I thought about the good times, the bad times, and it just helped me heal in a very special way that I felt like my teacher saw, and he was like, you know what, it's something special about what you do and you're doing, and who is this person? I had all these questions, and that's when I realized, like, this is something more than drawing. Mm-hmm. And he saw that too. And he was like, yeah, you should go take more classes and like really, because it's something very special in what you just did. And it was just a drawing. Yeah. So and then the process for me of healing and feeling better just by doing a drawing, I realized like, yeah, this is something that's deeper than just drawing characters. Right. It's like a way of healing myself,
We're speaking with Aaron Fowler, who's an artist and sculptor behind Live Culture Ones, which is now showing at St. Louis Art Museum as part of its exhibit, The Culture, Hip Hop and Contemporary Art in the 21st Century. Aaron, as you're talking about the way that people around you influenced, what you were doing, the last time you were here was in 2021, so it was in the midst of the pandemic, and you were talking about Into Existence. Do you feel like the sculpture that we're talking about and how that came to be, the inspiration, that has connections to what the spirit of hip hop is and what it is being specifically here in St. Louis?
I mean, definitely. I feel like I said, the spirit of hip hop, you just see how hip hop has grown, from just doing it as a way, not looking for anything, but just a way of like expression, you know what I mean? Like a way of like expressing love, freeing our peoples, from such a wild world. It wasn't done with like crazy intentions to try to be something. It was just like, we have to do this to survive and thrive, So I feel like the same thing kind of came out of Into Existence. For me, it was like a answer to a question that I had about, the commercial world or the art world. Is this the only way for me as an artist to express myself through an art world that doesn't align with the spirit of why I make what I make? Mm-hmm. And Into Existence was born out of that question, and the process of Into Existence so far is literally doing or becoming a solution to what the questions I had. And it's now like I'm able to work freer, work with my people in a lot of ways, have more fun, express myself more naturally. Yeah. And also, let the spirit of me release in that expression in a similar way. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's very aligned with how hip hop was born and how it's grown. Yeah.
So hip hop is, sampling. It's taking from many different places to create something new. And a few days ago, you posted a series of videos on Instagram, and they showed you collecting materials from the side of highways. This thing that you were talking about as far as solutions and taking from what is around you to create, how is it that you decided to use scrap metal from car accidents for your sculptures? And is it connected to what happened with your cousin?
Well, first, shout out to my sister, Joy Walker. She's the one that does my Instagram and, documents my processes and stuff. So I can't take the credit for that post, but yeah, it's very connected. I found myself in my process always collecting car parts, you know what I mean? And it's a way of I don't know, at first it was just like, all right, I'm going to make cars out of car parts, but I find myself always bringing myself or thinking about my cousin when I collect these parts. And sometimes I end up in my studios, I end up with piles of car parts, I'm like, what am I doing with that? And then during the pandemic, releasing myself and, being natural, I realized I just started making everything out of these car parts because it's a way for me to use the thing that hurt me the most to heal me and make beauty out of, you know what I mean? And always keep that energy and that experience, at a value, because I lost someone that day, but I also found art that day. Sure. So it's a way for me to always put that in there. And I feel like it's definitely a connection to that,
Okay. Yeah, and maintaining that connection.
Definitely.
Is there a particular message that is there, when you're, or the message sort of behind using scrap metal and then, reducing, reusing, recycling, what is there to that?
I mean, to be honest, it's plastic, which is, it's just easier to work with. So when I'm finding the bumpers, it's just plastic, Uh-huh. But it's also I don't know, it's just, I feel like a lot of us get limited from doing what we love because of either resources, we can't afford it, you know what I mean? So we end up not doing what we love and we settle. You know, I'm a strong believer in, you know, we got everything around us to do what we love, you know? So being able to just like create crazy art or anything, if I don't have no money, it doesn't cost anything to pick up some plastic bumpers off the road or, you know, something like that, something that's really just around me. It's free 99, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's like you can still do what you love with $0, you know? And I think that's very important with anyone that's living life. You know, I feel like we have to do our passions first. And I feel like that's the freedom that we have. And we never have to settle for anything and use what's around you. If you don't have money, go find things that's around you to create, you know, because it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, collage is something that people, they recognize mostly. But assemblage, which is three-dimensional, right, rather than flat, may not be as familiar, and that's something that you do. Why does assemblage speak to you?
Mostly, let's see, I was trained as like a traditional painter, you know, so I still like making images and, you know, sculptures. I feel like it's a strong structure in creating an art, you know, creating art and from that tradition. But also, you know, just using paint and things like that becomes sort of not fully reflective of who I am, you know, and when I'm able to bring stuff from the places that I go or energies from where I'm from, or, you know, when you start to insert those things into the work, it kind of becomes like a nostalgia. It brings people to a place or a thing or a time, you know, so then it's kind of like a door for people to enter the work.
Yeah.
You know, people can empathize with a certain object more so they can than like this oil paint or acrylic paint that can somewhat be pretty conservative or, you know, like high class or something, you know.
Right.
When you insert these things, it's like an entry, you know what I mean, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And then to be able to make that work still naturally in a way that I was trained, just becomes like a great experiment in a way, you know.
So you live in LA and New York?
I'm all over the place, to be honest. Yeah, mainly my home is in LA.
Where in Los Angeles?
I'm downtown LA in the Arts District.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I live mostly, but travel a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a part of the process.
Well, and part of the reason I ask for specificity about that is that when someone says, I'm from St. Louis, then the follow-up really should be like, where in St. Louis?
Real talk, yeah.
And even with New York, it's New York, but where in New York? It's Harlem, right?
Yeah, I was in Harlem for a while and the Bronx. You know, kind of, like I said, I move around a lot. But,
yeah. So what has it been like to make art, especially the way that you approach it and using things around you? How has that affected, what you've created? And especially because those places, those neighborhoods, they're so different one from another. How might somebody see that in your work if they're looking for it? Or how might it emerge if they're not seeking it out?
I feel like it's one of those things like we just talked about with assemblage. You know, it's like I always use everything from when I go places, I just collect, you know, I almost become a collector of just things. So I feel like that inserts the work. And then also, I don't know, like for me, LA does something to my color palette. You know, it's very sunny. It's very like, you know, just a bright color. So every time I'm working in LA, I have this sort of color tone that's important. And it just enters the work very naturally, you know. But then like, you know, you go to certain stores or certain places and like I put a lot of hair in my work and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And there's certain tags or certain brands that insert into the work that you can just notice. If you're from those areas, visit those areas, you'll see that, you know. And the same thing with Harlem. I mean, Harlem has such a presence, you know. So when I was making work back then, I mean, I was using like convenience store windows, you know, because gentrification is always happening.
Sure.
You know, so it's always like this sort of change and things getting built. So you sort of see, I collect those things and insert them into the work, and you see that, you know, you'll be able to read it or, you know, feel it.
Yeah. And in this last minute, you know, in addition to your large shoe sculpture, that is, the exhibit does a good job at expressing hip hop through fashion, and Lil Kim's wigs are part of that, as well as a hat from Chance the Rapper. What else about the exhibit do you really appreciate when it comes to fashion and hip hop? just like 30 seconds.
Yeah. I don't know. I appreciate the energy of like, seeing familiar things, TV shows I grew up in. It's a bunch of my classmates from school in the show. So it's just cool to see their work. And, it's cool to see that type of work in these type of spaces. It's like, it's just a little refreshing,
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Aaron Fowler is a St. Louis born and raised artist whose larger-than-life recycled car part sculpture of Air Force Ones is now showing at SLAM as part of its The Culture exhibit. Aaron, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
This episode was produced by Maya Norfleet.
Our audio engineer is Aaron Dorr. This podcast was mixed and edited by Aaron.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
St. Louis on the Air proudly supports local artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.